Hello everyone, this is Jacqueline Jax. Welcome back. I'm here to teach you how to paint this lovely tree for fall using the Golden Hour palette and the Coastal Breeze palette from jaxwatercolor.com. If you haven't subscribed to the watercolor, I really recommend it. It's so much fun, and we do lots and lots of tutorials, as you know, as well as receive paint every season. So I was trying to think of a way to make trees really easy. And I was thinking of doing circles because they will allow you to kind of get a nice little base for a tree without it being so perfectly round. Now, I know circles are round, but by lining up these circles, we're kind of going to encourage our eyes to see things a little bit differently. So I want you to take just a neutral color. So this is just the beach color from the Coastal palette. And I want you to think about how you can line up some circles without making the overall tree a circle. Do you know what I mean? So that it's kind of a little more uneven, because that's how trees are. You can make smaller circles and bigger circles, but the big thing is that at the bottom of the circle, we want it to be more like the watercolor to be heavier and more dark. And at the top of the circle, you can make the watercolor lighter. And I think this automatically is a really quick and easy way to get your trees to look dimensional and make them look really unique and different and a little more professional. So as I start adding color, right, I'm just kind of splotching some color down because I want to do some random background colors. But as I add color to my circles, notice how I'm putting in darker colors, right? So I'm putting in a little bit of the French sienna, putting a little bit of the orange from the Coastal palette in there. And there's going to be, like, say we're doing a fall tree that's just yellows and oranges with a little bit of burnt sienna. So we want that French burnt sienna to be the lower portion of each circle, because that's going to be like the cluster of shadows of the leaves. You know what I mean? And that, from light to dark on each level of the circles, is going to give you a really cool mix of light to dark shadows, no matter what color you choose. Does that make sense to you? I think it's going to be a really easy way for you to develop trees. And I thought that this was, something fun to do anyway, right? Because you're turning circles into a tree. So now I'm just taking my pointed round brush, and I'm still using the Princeton one. I've been using that all week. And this is the size 12. And I'm just kind of dotting random paint. So keeping the yellow up at the top and the medium yellow and the orange or burnt siennas at the bottom of each circle. So remember where those circles are, right? So I'm still kind of filling in each circle individually, even though they're overlapping. At this point, the water is building up and, it's going to start running into each other, but that's okay because we want it to. But at the same time, in our mind, it makes sense to just do the top of each circle lighter and the bottom of each circle darker. Now, also notice that I'm picking the top left as my light source and the bottom right as my shadow. So any darker color I get on my brush is going to go in the bottom right of each circle, and any light color is going to go at the top left of each circle. And that's going to help us maintain that shadow versus light source. And you see how good you can see it right now because I'm adding the burnt sienna from the Golden Hour palette, and it really does just kind of make it stand out. Now see, the areas that are even in the lower circles that are yellow, they're now standing out to you because they are the light source, right? The light is hitting those. And this is how we're going to get this tree to look really cool and dimensional. Now, tell me this isn't a very easy way to understand lights and darks in watercolor trees, and also get a nice, big, fluffy, full tree without it being perfectly round and looking really bizarre, right? Because we're focused on filling the circles. Right? I'm still going around my circles. It's making it look fluffy. It's giving it those round kind of edges, right? And I'm not having to work that hard in figuring out where do I put the paint. So now instead of dealing with a tree as one big piece, we're dealing with individual circles that make up our tree. I really like this whole concept. I think I'm going to do a lot more like this because I feel like it's just so much easier to look at. Let me know in the comments if this is just as easy for you to see it and do it this way as it is for me. So I'm still just kind of adding paint. Now, remember, paint, when it's wet, can be a little bit darker. So we want to build it up, right? Because I still have water on my brush. I have water on my paper. So in order for our paint to get deep and dark and have lots of saturated color, we need a lot on the brush, but we don't want it sopping wet. So you kind of have to go in there and make not only darker tones with your watercolor, but maybe mixing in a little of the purple, mixing in a little bit of the burnt sienna, mixing in a little bit of the verdant twilight from the golden hour palette, just until we get those darks, right? And then when we do get the darks, I'm going to do the tree trunk with that. So just a simple tree trunk, something that just leads right in. Now I'm going to start touching some areas with that dark color so that we can kind of have the start of some branches or branch shadows in our tree, just to see how it looks. Now, any area that is dry or any area that is white space, I can go ahead and put kind of like a quick little dash in there to represent a branch maybe peeking through the leaves. But mostly I'm still working on the bottoms of my circles, remember? So any dark that I add, I'm working from the bottom of my circle into maybe a little area that I might have a little branch kind of peeking through. I'm doing this while it's wet because I do still want that blend. Now, if there's another way you can do it, you can definitely take a small brush and you can add your branches in there after it's dry. But I do want a layer of this shadow here, and I think it just kind of blends in with the French sienna so well. The palette, the entire golden hour palette just really blends in together, so it's going to work. So now I'm taking a wet, clean brush, and I'm going to go through some of those dots, and I'm going to turn them into a very, very easygoing background. Now notice that some of my dots are connected to the tree, and because it's still wet, it's going to bleed in, and I kind of want to experiment with that in pushing some of that watercolor around and letting just a few little spots maybe bleed out of the tree. Just a few, not a lot, because you don't want the whole tree bleeding out, right? But maybe one or two, and then maybe I'll just go back and clean it up and just use some of that color, just push it around a little bit. It's just a nice little way to get kind of like a tea-stained look or something a little more relaxed. And you should learn anyway how to control these kind of bleeds, It's very simple. If it gets carried away and you don't want to use the color, if it's bleeding too much and you want to stop it, all you have to do is use a dry brush or a paper towel and you can easily stop it. So simple. But see how pretty that looks? It kind of gives me that focus, that blur. And I really love the way it looks and the way it turned out. You see the dark, how it goes in? You don't really know if it's a branch or if it's just the shadow. We've got a nice, beautiful, full, fluffy tree. But now we're going to add a little scraping. And the reason why is because this is how on a wet canvas I can actually bring in some of those tree branches so that it doesn't bleed, but it still looks visually together. So if I were to wait for this to dry and add these tree branches with paint, it would kind of look, you'd have to get just the right color, right? But this is a really easy way to do it, because once I scrape that paper, because this is a really nice paper, it's going to just kind of ever so slightly give me a darker hue. And to me, that is just golden, right? I don't have to come up with the color. I don't have to do much. It's a perfect like little scratch. So it's very, very thin line. And it kind of gives me that really organic shape because it's very difficult to be perfect when you're using the edge of your spatula or some kind of a sharp object, like maybe a twig, a dried twig that you found, a dry little branch. Any kind of scraper will work. I'm also going to put some scratches and scrapes through the tree trunk because I want some texture there. But simple as that. So how's your tree? I can't wait to see it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If it was helpful and you think this is something that you could do moving forward with a lot of your foliage, let me know and I'll do some more of these so that you can keep practicing. Have a great one, you guys, and thank you so much for supporting the watercolor and the tutorials.